Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a really significant government move. It's the executive order from April 23, 2025, called Preparing Americans for High-Paying Skilled Trade Jobs of the Future.
Right. And this isn't just, dry policy.
Exactly. It's about how people might actually get skills and jobs, particularly in the skilled trades. We want to unpack the main ideas.
And also the debate swirling around them.
Yeah, so you get a clear picture of what's proposed and, frankly, why it matters.
We'll be focusing on a few key areas from the order.
Like the plan to consolidate federal programs.
The push to expand registered apprenticeships.
And this idea of promoting alternative credentials.
Absolutely. And the big picture goal seems to be tying workforce development much closer to the country's reindustrialization needs.
Equipping people for those high-paying, in-demand jobs. So let's start with that first piece, consolidating federal workforce programs.
Okay.
The thinking behind it seems to be that the current system is, well, a bit scattered.
That's the core argument in the order, yes. It suggests the current programs are fragmented, maybe not working together effectively.
To actually get people into good jobs.
Right. And that this lack of connection hinders the big investments being made in reindustrialization.
So what's the specific action mandated?
Well, within 90 days of that April date, the Secretaries of Labor, Commerce, and Education have to review all federal workforce development programs.
90 days. That's fast.
It is, and they need to deliver a report with strategies for improvement. Consolidation is a big part of that.
What else is in that report's mandate?
They need to pinpoint opportunities to integrate systems, shift resources based on what employers say they need, especially in new industries.
Okay.
They're also asked to recommend administrative reforms, maybe suggest more restructuring, more consolidation down the line.
And identifying programs that aren't working.
Exactly. Identifying ineffective programs for potential changes, shifting their funding, or even, eliminating them.
That sounds like it could be quite disruptive. And I imagine there's another side to this coin. Concerns about consolidation.
Definitely. That's a major counterpoint. The worry is that lumping things together could mean getting rid of specialized programs.
Programs designed for specific groups.
Precisely. Initiatives serving unique populations, maybe reducing their access to the tailored support they really need. The fear is efficiency might override specific needs.
And this isn't just a hypothetical concern, right? There's some history here, particularly with the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE.
Yes, that's a relevant example people point to. DOGE's decision to cut nearly $400 million in AmeriCorps grants. That's often cited.
What was the impact of that?
It hit over 1,000 programs, displaced something like 32,000 volunteers, and it wasn't spread evenly.
How so?
Well, states like Mississippi and Louisiana saw their entire grant portfolios wiped out.
Sure.
This affected vital services, housing help, disaster recovery, support for veterans, things like that.
Wow. And those cuts were challenged.
They were. Coalition unions, local governments, nonprofits sued DOGE.
On what grounds?
They argued the cuts essentially bypassed Congress's authority over funding, so it raised some fundamental questions about process and power.
So it really makes you think. As we look at this new push for efficiency through consolidation, what's the potential trade-off? How do you balance streamlining things with making sure specific community needs don't get lost in the shuffle? Can efficiency come at the cost of essential support?
It really brings up that fundamental question. What does effective workforce policy even mean? Is it just broad numbers, or does it include that targeted help for communities facing, unique challenges?
Let's shift to the second big pillar then, expanding registered apprenticeships. The order seems pretty positive about them.
Very positive. It calls them a proven model and explicitly aims to protect and strengthen them. The goal is ambitious.
Extremely ambitious, reaching over 1 million new active apprentices within 120 days.
Yes, 120 days from April 23rd. That's a very rapid scale-up.
So how are they supposed to achieve that? Is there a plan?
There has to be. The same secretaries, Labor, Commerce, Education are required to submit a plan.
What's in the plan?
Strategies for expansion, getting apprenticeships into new fields, scaling the model across the country, making them run more efficiently, and, importantly, better connections with schools and colleges.
Okay, but like with consolidation, this speed and scale, It raises flags for some people.
It does. The concern is that if you expand that fast, you might accidentally encourage the creation of, let's say, lower quality programs alongside the existing ones.
Parallel programs that maybe don't meet the same standard.
That's the worry, that it could undermine the quality and the strong reputation that registered apprenticeships have built.
And this concern connects to past proposals, doesn't it? Like the idea from Project 2025 about IRAs.
Exactly. Project 2025 suggested bringing back the industry-recognized apprenticeship program, or IRAP.
And the criticism of IRAs was,
Critics see them as potentially weaker, possibly lower standards, fewer worker protections. The fear is they might favor corporate needs over worker training and well-being.
and ultimately damage the brand of the established registered apprenticeship.
It erodes the trust in the proven model.
So it poses another big question for you, the listener. Can we scale up something successful this quickly without, watering down what made it good in the first place? Is speed the enemy of quality here?
It's that critical balance again, isn't it? How do you hit ambitious growth targets while making absolutely sure the training quality stays high? How do policymakers ensure these new programs stick to the principles of the model they want to expand?
Okay, let's move to the third key piece, promoting alternative credentials, things other than a four-year degree.
Yes, this is about recognizing different ways people can get the skills they need.
How did the order approach this?
The strategy is to identify and actively promote these alternative credentials in different kinds of assessments.
And the purpose?
The idea is to map these credentials directly to the skills employers are actually looking for, to tackle those skills gaps more directly.
Seems practical.
Mm.
But, again, are there concerns?
There are. The main one is potential confusion
Confusion for who?
for both employers trying to hire and for people looking to get skills. It comes down to the huge variation in quality and recognition among all these different credentials.
It's not always clear what a particular certificate actually means.
Exactly. And we actually have some data on this.
Oh.
A survey found that 71% of recruiters, a big majority, find it harder to judge the quality of certifications and alternative credentials compared to traditional degrees.
So employers are struggling to figure out what's what.
It raises questions about how reliable these alternatives are as signals of someone's skills.
And it's not just employers, right? Higher education has thoughts on this too.
Yes, some higher ed leaders worry this focus could disrupt traditional degree programs.
How so?
The concern is it might lead to a more fragmented education system overall, maybe undermining the value people see in that broader, comprehensive training you get from a degree.
So in this job market that's changing so fast, how do we make sure new qualifications are, one, relevant, but two, actually understood and trusted? How do we avoid creating just a confusing mess of different badges and certificates?
It points to the need for maybe more standardization or at least some reliable quality checks. How do you build frameworks so these alternative credentials meet certain standards and employers everywhere kind of recognize their value?
Okay, last major area, transparency and accountability. The order wants more oversight.
That seems to be the goal. It mandates better transparency on how well federal workforce programs and credentials actually perform.
Perform in what sense?
Looking at outcomes, specifically things like earnings and employment data for people after they complete a program.
And how will they get this data?
The plan involves streamlining how information is collected, trying to harmonize performance measures across different programs.
So you can compare apples to apples, maybe?
Sort of. Also, reducing the reporting burden on the grantees running the programs and using reliable data sources. Okay. The aim is clearer, more dependable info on the real-world impact.
But, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, there's likely a counterargument here too, a potential downside to focusing heavily on these metrics.
There is. The concern is that if you apply really strict performance metrics, especially ones focused just on hitting certain earnings or job placement numbers quickly,
You might unintentionally penalize some programs.
Exactly. Programs that serve populations facing really significant systemic barriers, it might be harder for their participants to hit those standard benchmarks right away.
So a program doing vital work in a tough community might look like it's failing on paper.
That's the risk.
Yeah.
And it could lead to those programs losing funding or being shut down, even if they're providing crucial support and pathways for people who need it most.
It brings us back to that balancing act. How do you measure success in a way that demands accountability,
Responsible use of funds.
but doesn't ignore the complex realities of serving diverse communities and tackling deep-seated inequality? How do we balance clear outcomes with equitable support?
It forces us to ask what metrics really show the full value of these programs. Are simple job and wage numbers enough? Or do we need to look broader at skill gains, job retention, the wider benefits to the community?
So let's try to wrap this up. The executive order aims for a major overhaul of workforce development,
Definitely aiming for modernization.
using consolidation, a big push on apprenticeships, and promoting alternative credentials to meet economic needs.
But as we've talked through, each strategy comes with real debates about quality, about equity, about potentially unforeseen consequences.
Right. And understanding these debates, these tensions, is really crucial if you're interested in the future of work, education, or economic opportunity in the U.S.
It's complex stuff, no easy answers.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. As we try to equip Americans for tomorrow's jobs, what are the absolute must-haves? What makes a workforce system truly effective for everyone and ensures success not just now but long-term? Think about that balance meeting today's economic needs versus fostering the broader potential of all people in all communities.
A lot to consider there.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.